Hey guys, so I figured it might help some of you if I were to go over the PowerPoint that I have provided for you. You're not required to listen to this, but it might help, like I said. So we're going to go over the male and female reproductive anatomy. So first we'll go over the male anatomy, but before I get into it, just really quick, you need to understand that males start to produce sperm at puberty. The difference with males and females in that sense is that females are born with all of the eggs or ova that they'll have, and they start to mature those eggs at puberty. So males produce sperm, females mature their eggs at puberty. So for the male reproductive organs, as far as external organs go, the definition for penis is the organ used to transfer urine, sperm, and semen. Also contains the urethra. So a lot of questions I get in my health class are, what's the difference between sperm and semen? So semen is what contains sperm. So there are three glands we're going to go over in just a second that produce semen. Sperm is the actual cell that will penetrate the egg, the ovum. So sperm are within the semen. So hopefully that helps to clear that up if you have that question. The scrotum is the sac around the testicles. So this is a muscular tissue that holds the testes to suspend them away from the body because sperm cannot survive at body temperature, so they have to be suspended away from the body to be able to survive. Testicles or testes, you'll probably see testes within this PowerPoint. Just know that it's used interchangeably. Two sex glands that produce sperm, and then testosterone. So testosterone plays a huge role in the production of sperm, not only sperm, but also secondary sex characteristics, so other things that are happening at puberty, like maybe the voice deepening or shoulders broadening or developing muscles. So testosterone plays a huge role in that. Also, you need to understand that testicles to males are like ovaries to females. And we'll go over that when we get to the females in just a second. The epididymis is the place where sperm are stored until they ripen and mature. So one of your assignments you're going to be doing in this class, it'll be very beneficial for you to understand the pathway of sperm. So just know that at puberty, they're produced in the testicles. Whoops. With the help of testosterone. Once produced in the testicles, they'll go to the epididymis, where they mature a little bit. And then the vas deferens is kind of like, I like to think of it as like a long pathway or highway, and you'll see in some of the pictures I'm going to show you in just a second. No worries, they're not graphic pictures, but it's a passageway that carries the sperm from the epididymis to the seminal vesicles. So it really is just a passageway. And then the seminal vesicles are, it's the first spot where semen will be produced. I always get students like wondering about this part right here, sugary fluid. Don't let your mind wander too much. It's really just because it's fructose, because the seminal vesicle, the fluid that comes from that, actually helps to give energy and nourishment. Because if you think of fructose, anything ending in OSE, it's a type of sugar that's meant to give energy. The prostate gland, this bottom part is probably cut off for you, but it's a walnut-shaped gland. You're going to see this in the picture in just a second. Surrounds the urethra, and the prostate gland just provides fluid that adds to the semen and the hormones. So it actually is plays a pretty big role in protecting the sperm because the vagina is very acidic, and then also the urethra, which we'll get to in just a second with Cowper's gland. So both urine and semen run through the Cowper's gland because the urethra runs through the penis, so both urine and semen run through that, but not at the same time. The Cowper's gland plays a pretty important role in that the fluid that comes from the Cowper's gland neutralizes that so that sperm can actually pass through the urethra and not die. And then, like I just mentioned, the vagina is very acidic, so all of the glands that are making up semen are really helping to protect the sperm so that they can they can survive through this long journey, long and tough journey that they have. Okay, and then the urethra is the passageway to transfer urine or semen outside the body. All right, so 5-minute rundown of the male reproductive organs. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Just pictures that you'll probably see on the test. Actually, you will see these on the test. So just know that with this front view, the seminal vesicle actually sits in the back behind the urinary bladder. That's why it's just pointing to some area in the front. It's in the side view that you can really see the seminal vesicle. And then this is the prostate gland. This is a side view, so you can only see the one of the Cowper's glands, and then the urethra that runs through the penis. All right. So female reproductive organs. So we have the labia. Labia are the outer and inner lips protecting against germ entry through the vagina. So if you think about the anatomy of the female reproductive system, I'll just go ahead and say I know a lot of people don't like the word moist, but really like dark, warm, moist. If you think about those kinds of areas, it's going to draw bacteria, and so the vagina actually, so that's one of the reasons why it's acidic, is so that it can protect the female from just different bacteria and things that may come into the body. And the labia play a pretty big role in that. And then the vulva are all sexual parts located outside the body. So it's actually kind of like a blanket term, or like a category. So the vaginal opening would be considered vulva, the labia, and then actually the clitoris, I don't have this definition, but just so you understand, the clitoris is like the sex pleasure organ for females. So it's clitoris is to female like penis is to male. And then the vagina is the passageway from outside the body to the cervix for sperm, menstrual fluid, and then hopefully you know by now that it is the birth canal. It's where babies are born or delivered, unless the mom has a C-section, cesarean section, but most of the time it is a vaginal birth. So the cervix, in relation to childbirth, you probably have heard, or you might have heard, like, oh, she's dilated to a 6 or whatever. That is dealing with the cervix. The cervix will open to about 10 centimeters. It's about 4 inches. I don't know if you can imagine. That doesn't seem like that doesn't seem very big. And you'll see there's a pretty good picture on the next slide. I think it's the next slide, where you can see the cervix a little bit. But yeah, so the cervix is the lower end of the uterus. This is what has to open for the baby to be able to come out. Here it is. Here's what I was talking about. So, and then here's the definition for uterus. So this is the uterus. This is also called the womb. It's a muscle because it has to expand. I don't know if you can imagine if it wasn't a muscle, it would be very painful. Pregnancy isn't super amazing or pleasant to a lot of women as it is, so if this wasn't a muscle, it would make it even worse. So it expands so that the baby can grow. Here's the cervix, okay? That's what has to open for the baby to come out, and then there's the vagina. So the uterus is the womb, hollow expandable muscle where the baby grows. The endometrium is the inner lining of the uterus. So right here would be the endometrium. This is a pretty big deal here. What happens, so the endometrium is actually blood and tissue. This is what leaves the body during a period. So a female is usually on a cycle. The beginning of the cycle is usually when the period starts. So the endometrium is what leaves the body during the period. Menstruation is just the term for that endometrium leaving. So the sloughing off or the shedding of that endometrium. And just know that it's blood and tissue. I know that most people think it's just blood, but the endometrium, the blood and tissue, plays a huge role for if a woman is pregnant. It actually, hormones will tell it to stay there. Say, hey, endometrium, you stay there because there's a baby that needs to grow, and it helps to nourish the baby as it grows. Okay, the fallopian tubes. This is where fertilization takes place. So if sperm are present, which actually, fun fact, sperm can live in the fallopian tubes for 3 to 5 days. And then an ovum has to be fertilized in 24 hours or it will die. and it will just kind of disintegrate and leave the body during the next menstrual cycle. So if someone has intercourse, if a female has intercourse and she has not ovulated, there's a chance she can still get pregnant if she ovulates within that time frame of the sperm being able to survive in the fallopian tubes. So that's pretty important to know that fertilization takes place there. The fimbriae are right here. You can't really see them very well. You'll be able to see in a different picture in a second, but they're the finger-like structures. So once a month when the ovum is released, a mature ovum, the fimbriae help to kind of draw it into the fallopian tubes. Ovaries, I mentioned ovaries earlier. Ovaries to female are like testicles to male. Ovaries at puberty, they help to mature the ovum. So like I mentioned earlier, females are born with all of the eggs they'll ever have. So then they just help to mature the ovum, and then once a month one is released. They take turns releasing, so it's kind of cool. Like 1 month maybe this one will release, and then the next month that one will release one. The perineum, actually, so not a whole lot of people know about this. It's a non-reproductive part. It's the area between the rectum and the vagina. An interesting fact, you probably don't want to know this, but hey, knowledge is power. So this is the part that may tear during childbirth, so sometimes doctors will actually cut it because it's easier to heal if it's cut rather than if it tears. And actually, males have this too. So it's the area between the anus and the scrotum for males. It's called the perineum. Alright, so just a quick picture here. So actually I'll continue the journey of sperm. So with ejaculation, sperm or semen enters the vagina, comes up through the cervix, the uterus, and then remember that fertilization takes place in the fallopian tubes. So that's the journey into the female. And then here's the side view of the female. So if you look at this, I think it makes a lot more sense when someone says that like pregnant women always have to pee. Here's the uterus. That grows and it's sitting right on the bladder. So yeah, of course they're going to have to feel like they've got to pee all the time. Alright, so just briefly with the menstrual cycle. Whenever I ask on my test in my health class how long the average menstrual cycle is, most people think period. Oh, it's the period. No, it's not the period. The period is the first maybe 3 to 5 days of the cycle. So something you need to understand is females are always on a cycle. The average cycle is 28 to 32 days. So days 1 to 5 is that lining of the uterus is shed. So menstruation, you start your period. That happens if fertilization did not take place. If no sperm penetrated the ovum that was present in the fallopian tubes, then you won't get pregnant. Let's see, so 6 to 9, lining of the uterus is very thin. That makes sense if you just shed that endometrium. Whoops, sorry. Days 10 to 14, this is a big, important part in the menstrual cycle. You release mature ovum, so ovulation is what that is called. If sperm is present, then you can get pregnant, and it'll eventually, the fertilized egg will make its way to the uterus. Days 15 to 28, the lining of the uterus is ready to receive a fertilized egg. So going back to this really quick, it's important to keep track of your menstrual cycle because, first of all, you don't want some surprise while you're out in public. Second of all, if you're late, that can tell you that you may be pregnant. And then the last thing is if you're trying to get pregnant, you want to know when you're ovulating, which it's about midway through your cycle, so it might not be day 14 for everyone, but you want to know when that egg is present so that you can have intercourse. The opposite would be true also. If you don't want to get pregnant, you need to be a little more careful when you are ovulating. So, alright guys, so ovulation, just talked about that. We're just going to wrap up really quick so that this video doesn't cut me off. If the egg is fertilized, then it makes its way to the uterus, and that endometrium stays there for the 9 months. So pregnant women do not have a period. Yeah, if more than one egg is released, it's fraternal twins. So more than one egg would be fraternal twins. One egg within the division would be the identical twins. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully that gives you a little better understanding of the male and female reproductive system. Let me know if you have any questions.